Warning, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Derek Ruby Show. I am your host, the previously mentioned Mr. Ruby, and as we roll along through our Halloween month here on the Derek Ruby Show, we're going to talk about the 1960 classic, Psycho. Now, last week I said the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was one of the godfathers of the slasher film. But the father of all the slasher films is definitely Psycho. Movies like Friday the 13th and Halloween wouldn't even be possible if Psycho had never existed. So the movie starts off in a motel room with our lead character played by Janet Leigh, and she's there with her boyfriend, and they just got done doing the deed, and then they talk about their situation a little bit, and she basically proposes marriage to him.
Oh, Sam, let's get married.
Yeah. And live with me in a storeroom behind a hardware store in Fairvale. We'll have lots of laughs. Tell you what, when I send my ex-wife for alimony, you can lick the stamps.
I'll lick the stamps.
Oh, that 1950s style dialogue. If everybody's relationship was like this fantasy love of the 50s, well, the divorce rate would be very low in this country, I'll tell you that much. So then Marion goes to work, and a rich man comes in, and he brags about the $40,000 he's fixing to pay for his daughter's house.
I'm buying this house for my baby's wedding present. $40,000 cash.
Marion's boss tells her to take the money to the bank, and she tells him that she has a headache and asks if she can go ahead and go home afterwards. Gee, I wish I could just tell my boss whenever I felt like it, I got a headache, I need the weekend off. So considering her situation, Marion takes the 40 grand, gets in her car, and takes off with it. And on her way out of town, she sees her boss. And then we hear the iconic music that Psycho is well known for. This was a very important piece of music to the slasher genre. I mean, Friday the 13th and a lot of other slasher films tried to emulate it. So Marion's going down the road and she pulls off on the side and goes to sleep and is woke up by a police officer. She's very combative with the officer and obviously has something to hide. And when he asks her for ID, she turns sideways and then starts digging in her purse. Now, I don't care who you are. If you acted suspicious like that today, they'd haul you out of the car, or even worse. If nothing else, you'd be going to jail. So she drives into town and goes to the first car lot she sees, and the cop is watching her from across the street, and she goes ahead and pays cash for a brand new car. And then she leaves in a hurry. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, well, Derek, it's only $40,000. I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but why would anybody risk a felony or some long-term jail time over trying to hook up with her boyfriend or whatever? Well, you gotta understand, $40,000 in 1960 is about $321,000 today. So yeah, that's a fuck ton of cash. So Marion is driving and it's pouring down rain, so she has to find a motel to go stay at. And she comes along to the Bates Motel. And then we meet the hotel owner, Norman Bates. And Norman checks Marion in and asks her if she would like something to eat. He shows her to her room and he goes upstairs. She opens the window and she can hear Norman arguing with his mother. But when he comes back, she follows him into the office and she sees a bunch of birds stuffed and hanging on the wall, and that should be some red flags right there. They go ahead and get to talking and they start talking about his mother. And whenever she suggests that he should possibly get his mother some help, he goes from being kind of a shy, quiet guy to a creepy little bastard fairly quick.
People always call him Madhouse someplace, don't they? Put her in someplace. People always mean well. They cluck their thick tongues and shake their heads and suggest oh so very delicately. She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
So after they're done talking, she goes back to her room, and then you see Norman going ahead and peeping through a little hole in the wall there. As Marion hops in the shower, and she is just smiling, it's almost like she's washing all the sin off of her, because she's basically kind of made the decision at this point that she's probably going to take the money back. And then we get to the most iconic and famous scene of this movie. Now, that scene right there is the one thing that everybody always remembers. It has been parodied by cartoons and television shows and things for many, many years now. And I would go as far as to say that the slasher genre would not exist if it wasn't for this scene. Or just look at the way she leans against that wall and pulls the shower curtain down. You see the blood going down the drain, and then that just close-up of her eye with just that little bit of water under her eyes. It's just something that sticks with you. So after Marion meets her untimely demise, Norman goes into the room and cleans up after his mother. He tidies up, puts her in a shower curtain, takes her into the trunk of the car. He drives her down the street and puts her into the water. He doesn't even take the $40,000 because she wrapped the $40,000 up into a newspaper. It's pretty smart of her. It's kind of one of the things that I would do when I had something my parents weren't supposed to see when I was younger and just kind of put it out in plain sight so they'd never think to look. So then Marion's sister goes and finds her boyfriend and wants to know where Marion's at. And the detective shows up and he wants to know the same thing. Because at this point the jig is up and everybody knows that the $40,000 is gone. And then this is probably one of the only parts of the movie where I feel that the music is out of place because we get a little montage of the detective as he's knocking on people's doors at different motels trying to figure out where Marion is. And I just find this really odd. They should have used some kind of detective music or something because there's just no sense of urgency here. There's no killer after him or anything. Then when he finally shows up at the Bates Motel, there is no music. So he talks to Norman Bates for a little bit, who's obviously lying about everything and is a terrible liar. So he calls Lila and Sam and tells them that he has a hunch, but he doesn't think that Sam did it. And he goes back to the motel, and he sneaks up to the house to talk to Norman's mother. And now he walks up the stairs, and when he gets to the top of the stairs, the mother comes flying out of the room and starts stabbing him. He falls all the way down the stairs, and she gets on top of him and just starts stabbing away. A lot of people don't even remember this death in the movie, probably because the other one is so much more iconic. So Lila and Sam go ahead and talk to the sheriff. They try to get help for this situation. Sam goes looking for the detective at the motel. He can't find him. And the reason he can't find him is because Norman has put him in the water as well. So finally they decide to pretend to be a married couple and go stay at the Bates Motel. So that way they can do some investigating on their own. They rent a cabin and they were able to sneak in where Marion's cabin was, and they're able to find a little bit of evidence. So Sam distracts Norman while Lila goes up to the house, and when Norman figures out something's up, he's able to get away and go back to the house. And unfortunately, she goes down into the basement, and she meets Norman's mother all right, and she's nothing but a dead skeleton. And Norman, dressed in drag, comes out with his butcher knife, and he's fixing to go ahead and stab her. And Sam comes in there and he subdues him. So Norman is arrested, and the psychologist has talked to him and has come to the conclusion that Norman is his mother. That is to say that he has a split personality. Oh, 1950s psychology. It's amazing. I know a lot of you are wondering why I keep saying the 50s, but 1960 is just the beginning of the 60s. You still have the 50s logic going on here. So then we get a shot of Norman in the room, and he's basically has his mother's voice in his head.
They're probably watching me. Well, let them. Let them see what kind of a person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know. And they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
And then the final shot of them pulling the car out of the water. And that's Psycho. So I can't tell you guys how influential this movie is to all the other slasher films out there. The soundtrack is amazing. Alfred Hitchcock in his day was the master of horror, and you could really tell by the way that this whole thing is shot. Janet Leigh is a strong actress for this film, and it's pretty ironic that her daughter Jamie Lee Curtis would be the star of Halloween, so things have come full circle as time has gone on. But it was unheard of back in the day for a star to be killed before the movie was even halfway over, and that was an unprecedented thing to do. Yes, some of the stuff in the movie is dated, and sometimes the music is a little out of place. But this is a classic, and if you've never seen it, I definitely recommend that you go out and see this. So I'm going to give Psycho 4.5 stars. So thank you guys for listening to the Derek Ruby Show. I invite you here next week as we continue our Halloween month. Do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Leave likes and comments. Tell me what you think about Psycho. Check out all the social media pages. The links will be in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time.
We all go a little mad sometimes.